Guess what? That guy sitting next to you that is cordial and a team player and is worried about customer service, that has 10% of the talent that you do, we can teach them everything else. I don't care how talented you are. If you're I don't want to work with you.
That was Kelly Sells, and she is a business development specialist for Space Junk Studio in Columbus, Ohio. Last week's episode was all about the strategies as a young creative that I'm using to build my network. And I wanted to expand on that this week by bringing in an absolute superstar of an expert in Kelly to expand on those topics, add her expertise, and just teach us lessons, teach me and the audience, of course, lessons about how she builds and maintains relationships in a creative industry that helps her grow and helps her enterprise grow as well. As you guys know, in the creative side of business, the skill of building and maintaining relationships is such a rare and incredibly valuable skill, and it's one that I want to cultivate. So this is why I'm talking to people like Kelly, trying to pick her brain and learning some of her most useful and helpful frameworks that can help me become successful and build my network, and help you guys as well. Kelly has dedicated her entire professional career to mastering the art of care and conversation. And the way that she talks to other people, you just really feel genuinely cared for, and she's someone that you want to talk to. And I believe that's a big reason why she's so successful. So in this episode, expect to learn how to put the needs of others before your own in conversation, some tactical knowledge for how to bring up sensitive conversation topics like money when you're interacting with people that you want to do business with, how to maintain relationships over time without it being awkward or coming across as needy, and Kelly's 3-part email framework, which you can put into practice right away, and I already have, and it's really helped me to get in touch with old people and maintain relationships with people over time, and it's been a very high value add to my repertoire as a creative, and I know there's so much value in this episode that you guys can learn. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Thank you for tuning into the Creative Journal. This is entry 015. By the way, if you guys are enjoying the show, please leave a rating and a review. That would mean the world to me. You guys are creative and I'm loving it. But without further ado, please welcome to the Creative Journal podcast, Mrs. Kelly Sells.
I'm basically a director of business development and have been for many years. And currently, I'm the director of business development for Space Junk. And that really, with the exception of starting my career with my husband and a couple production companies that he had, where we only filmed, literally film, live action and editing and directing and putting broadcast spots together for agencies. That's how I got my start. Before that, I was 7 years in the corporate world for Chase in marketing and advertising, learning the advertising ropes, learning all of the what went into advertising for branch marketing. So I stayed there for 7 years, and then that's when I branched off into production.
Okay.
So I had already gained a lot of experience with agencies in New York and Columbus and Chicago. And so I felt comfortable in that environment. So it was pretty easy for me to make the switch and start selling production.
Okay.
Um, and then, I went a couple places after that and then landed at Space Junk. And I was there for 11 years. I left for about 7 years to do my own thing and build another studio. And now I'm back. And I'm so happy to be back.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the team members are the same as before, but a lot of them are also new.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very excited about being back in my original role and building the client base and adding to it there, hopefully
Mm-hmm.
for the rest of my career. So
Awesome. Well, that's
yeah,
exciting. I'm sure they're glad to have you back. I
yeah.
was
I
looking on
mean,
the. Go ahead.
go ahead.
I was gonna say I was looking on the website, and it looks like you guys have a really great team.
We do.
Um, Great website, by the way, too. Um,
Oh, thanks.
but yeah, I mean, tell us a little bit about what you guys do at Space Junk and kind of your role in that.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm director of business development and marketing. So I'm responsible for bringing in not only new business, but helping to develop long-term relationships with the clients we bring in. We cater to agencies, but we also cater very strongly to direct to brand.
Hmm.
Most of our clients are direct, and the thing that I love about our studio is just the longevity of the relationship. Some of the clients that I brought in when I was there originally are still with us. So
Hmm.
we're talking, 8, 10, 15 years. We've still been working with a lot of the big brands in Columbus and around Ohio,
Hmm.
as well as nationally. We have some national clients as well. But my responsibility is to make sure that I'm out constantly searching for those new relationships,
Hmm.
bringing them in, obviously closing the jobs, but then making sure that we're developing a relationship as we go with the first project, and then hopefully either maintaining that relationship with the client, getting referrals from that client, or getting into other departments within that brand. And
Hmm.
that's kind of my method for business development, is
Okay.
making sure that we're not focusing on one-off projects, that we're focusing on long-term relationships.
Hmm.
And for that reason, I stay involved throughout the life of a project. I don't necessarily talk on all the calls or have a role in the project once it's launched, but I stay copied in to kind of see the tone and the conversation and how the project is going, so that when
Hmm.
that project is done, I'm completely up to speed and I can have a postmortem with that client and
Hmm.
ask them how the project went and know all the ins and outs of what might have happened, good or bad, throughout the life of that project. And
Okay.
that's one thing I'm pretty adamant about. I like to stay involved in the process. Like I said,
Hmm.
I don't bother anybody. I don't speak up if, something is happening on a call that I'm noticing, something was missed or whatever, but I always have
Hmm.
that constant relationship with my creative director and
Hmm.
our producer, just to make sure that, if something does go wrong, I can kind of raise a little bit of a flag, or if something's going really well, just
Hmm.
let people know that they're going over and above, which they usually do. So,
Yeah. Well, that's
yeah,
awesome. It sounds like you have a lot on your plate for sure.
I do.
So when you're the person that the clients interface with the most. So you really have to represent, the company well
Yep.
and be very forward facing and very good at maintaining and keeping relationships. So that's,
Yep.
I
Yep.
mean, you must be very good at communicating, I guess I would say, because you're kind of the middleman between the agency and the people that they're outsourcing the clients, and then maintaining those relationships over time takes effort too. So,
Exactly.
what's kind of your day to day look like? Is it any things you do consistently? I know you work remote, correct?
We do. All of us do
Okay.
now.
Okay, so I imagine what does your day look like? Kind of a lot of phone calls, kind of checking in with the team. Can you kind of take us through like what a day in the life of Kelly Sells business development
Yeah.
looks like?
Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. So I do have my best practices, which I have developed over 20 years. I have those written down,
Mhm.
because for a while I was a consultant where I worked with a variety of students, or not students, but clients and studios on their um, on their business development strategies and pipeline. So
Mhm.
I would work with live action studios, I'd work with animation studios and help them determine what type of business development process was best for them, what type of person they needed. More
Mhm.
times than not, they are an owner operator and
Mhm.
doing and handling creative and also handling business development.
Mhm.
So, having those best practices and being able to share them with other studios is very important. My
Mhm.
process on a day-to-day basis is to send out at least anywhere from 5 to 10 emails that are new, and
Mhm.
then follow up with the ones I've sent out previously. So 5 to 10 a day.
Hmm.
And then the snowball starts to roll, and you've got your follow up and you've got your new outreach. And so a good portion of my day is doing that.
Okay.
So lots of research, lots of where am I going to go next? What brands am I going to go to next? What brands are we working with that I can go within other departments? How
Hmm.
can we grow those relationships? So a
Hmm.
lot of emailing, not too many phone calls anymore, um,
Okay.
cold calls anyway, but lots
Mm.
of virtual calls with people that I'm connecting with or
Okay.
people who have potential projects and that type of thing.
Okay.
In addition to that, I'm responsible for marketing at Space Junk as well. I have a really solid team that helps me with that. So
Hmm.
once or twice a week, we're getting together and talking about our content calendar, what we're going to post, not only this week, but planning for the future. Figuring out if there's any special posts that we want to do, like behind the scenes
Hmm.
footage, or maybe there's a holiday coming up that we want to promote that fits
Yeah.
our brand. Um, so a lot of emailing, a lot of cold outreach, and then a lot of relationship development every day.
Mhm. Nice. Well, I view you as someone that is very knowledgeable in um I'm not just going to say the business side of creative because a lot of the listeners are younger creatives and they are owner
Yeah,
operators and they don't do this enough, you can't just focus on your craft 24/7. There's so much more that goes into it
absolutely.
as I've learned. And that's why I'm thrilled to be talking to you, but I feel like you have a ton of useful knowledge and skills that just that creatives are looking for. And what is it something I wanted to ask you was what is it about the creative industry that makes your role in business development so key? Like I know you've worked in corporate, you work with Chase. Is there
Mhm.
any similarities between kind of the more corporate environment and the creative industry, or are there any differences, or is there any overlap that you've seen?
I mean, there's a lot of similarities. It was important it was important for me to understand that side of the business. If I
Mhm.
was gonna jump over to the creative side, I wanted to make sure that I had been in the corporate environment and in the marketing and advertising long enough that I kinda understood their world as
Mhm.
well as what I was about to embark on. So, there are some similarities in the corporate world. I've never been asked that question before. That's a really good question. Um Back then, corporate marketing departments weren't built the way they are today.
Mhm.
Today, corporate marketing might include a creative director or a designer or an
Mhm.
animator or an
Mhm.
editor. So, the whole agency world and corporate world changed drastically once agencies started downsizing or people started leaving the big agencies and starting their own smaller ones. A
Mhm.
lot of the brands started building in-house agencies, companies like Abbott and Ross
Mhm.
and Nationwide and Limited Brands. A lot of
Yeah.
those big corporate brands that have a lot of creative going on
Mhm.
within their behind the scenes, they
Yeah.
started to bring a lot of artists in-house. So that made it even that made it even better for us to go after those types of clients because we already understand what they're up against,
Mhm.
internally.
Yeah.
Would be a great partner for them. And I think that's one reason why we were able to build our direct to client roster um, a lot a lot more quickly than some of the other studios in town
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
we went after that sooner than everyone else, I think.
Mhm.
So, and it's nice to be able with the direct brands, it's nice to be able to help those marketing and communications directors look like rock stars
Mhm.
by bringing them in, bringing them into our process, which we have a very solid process and pipeline,
Yeah.
and help teach them what we do so that the next time they do a project, they know more about budgeting for it. They know more about how to run it. They know
Mhm.
more about what we're going to ask them to do. So each time we work with them, they're more and more prepared.
Mhm.
So I think us going to direct brands helped us learn a lot and grow a lot But
Hmm.
with Direct Brands working with us, I think we're also adding knowledge to their tools that they use,
Hmm.
not only for video, but for their marketing process.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so, yeah, like I said, a lot of it, you have a very wide scope of stuff you have to know about your own business and then communicate that to the people
Yep.
because that's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Thank you for that. That was really helpful.
Yeah. And
Um, go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead. You're fine.
Yeah, and we do offer soft agency services is how I refer to it, in that we can do script writing, we can do storyboarding. We don't get involved in the strategy and discovery side on the brand side, but as long as they have brand standards and brand assets, we can help them from the very beginning with their project with just an outline or a creative brief. So, the fact just having those types of services also helps them execute a little more quickly.
Hmm.
Um, so that's another thing that I like about our studio and the way that we're set up in
Yeah.
working with Direct Brands.
Yeah, because a lot of what you guys do, as you know, if you're building out a marketing campaign or creating assets for the clients you're working with, a lot of it is very collaborative because
Yep.
I know people can be very protective of their brands and people can be very protective of what represents them. And it can kind of, have you ever had any issues or how do you navigate clients that can be difficult or maybe want too much control in the process, or have kind of trouble relinquishing control? How do you go about making sure it's a good relationship and keeping the peace? And because you're so good at building relationships, how do you kind of what makes a successful relationship? I guess.
Yeah, well, that credit goes to our head of production and our producers and our creative
Hmm.
director,
Hmm.
because the minute I know that there's a potential project out there, they're arming me with the proper forms and questions, that we ask the client to make sure
Okay.
that we're bringing in a client and a project that makes sense not only for us, but for them, that we're the right partner for that.
Hmm.
Um, and then once the budgeting and the scope is all done, it goes to the producer. Our head of production oversees that, and the creative director oversees that as well.
Okay.
So just knowing the type of questions to ask, if someone comes in and they've been onboarded and we've launched a new project with them and they're still feeling a little uncomfortable, or they're still feeling like they don't have enough control, then I haven't done my job and we haven't done my job in our
Hmm.
job in scoping that project and
Hmm.
giving that client the information that they need to understand what the next steps are.
Hmm.
So like I said before, we have an amazing pipeline, and part of that pipeline is even as far as having the production process in writing, the animation process in writing, so that if
Hmm.
they are still feeling really uncomfortable, we can literally have a meeting with them and take them through that process step by
Hmm.
step.
Yeah, you
And
guys
then
have those SOPs laid out. Yeah, it's
yeah, and then
important.
the producer kinda knows, depending on how much they've had to educate them throughout the process, or even at the first WIP that we're reviewing, or the first style frame or storyboard, you can
Hmm.
kinda gauge if the client is nodding their head and,
Yeah.
feeling very comfortable, or
Hmm.
if they're not really comfortable with what they're looking at. Our
Hmm.
producers are so good at holding their hand and making them feel comfortable throughout the process. And
Hmm.
if we feel that they're not comfortable at all, we'll stop the process and just make sure maybe there's another way of going about explaining it to them, or maybe there's another way of showing it to them.
Hmm.
Because the level of people that you work with in the corporate world is way different than how you work with creative directors at agencies. They know what
Yeah.
to expect from us. We know what they expect of us, and that's a little easier. It's their job to manage their client, but
Hmm.
when we're managing the client directly, there's a lot of education that goes on, with them
Hmm.
in the first project, and even the first, second, or third one, they're still learning.
Yeah.
But we're giving them the tools along the way to understand the process for the next time.
Okay, yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you about was how do you come across as being very genuine and very receptive to what the client wants done, especially say it's your first time meeting them and they're wary that you're representing a service to them, the one that comes with a monetary attachment. How do you kind of portray your team's value and really sell yourself in quotes kind of without being like salesy? Are there any best practices, or is it just being really genuine and listening well, or what are some things
Oh,
that
absolutely.
help with that?
Yeah. Well, doing your
Mhm,
research up front. So, unless I'm getting someone that calls in the office or goes to the website and says, "I wanna work with you," which happens sometimes, but not a lot.
mhm. Would
Um,
that sorry, not to cut you off. Would that change kind of how you would prepare and approach the conversation if someone reached out to you versus you
just
reaching out to
cold.
them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first thing I do is whatever information they've given me, either through an email or, through a voicemail, or if I'm not talking to them directly, I
Mhm,
have a whole list of questions. We all have a whole list of questions, me, the head of production, the producers, that we ask a client first to make sure that it's the type of project that Space Junk works on,
mhm.
and that we are able to service that client based on what they're asking for. So, I
Okay.
will ask for things like, you know, what's the story that you want to tell? How do you wanna tell it? Do you have any inspiration that you can show us, or
Mhm,
anything that you've seen out there in the world that you like, things that you don't like? Is there anything you've seen on our website that you like, that
mhm,
kind of demonstrates the way you wanna tell your story? I
mhm.
always try to ask their budget, at least their budget range, because there's so many ways to go about a project. There's so many ways to
Mhm,
execute.
mhm.
I always try to ask
When
what their budget range is.
Yeah. When would you ask that? Would you ask that kinda I know it depends on each situation, obviously, I'm
It
sure.
more and more, the longer I've been doing this, I ask it right up front. I
Mhm.
try to ask it right up front.
Okay.
And if they don't know what that range is, that's a little bit of a red flag, because if you're calling on a studio to get some work done, you should maybe have an idea of what
Mhm.
you're willing to spend. And
Right.
again, sometimes people don't, if it's a smaller brand or it's the first time they've done a video project.
Mhm.
Um, and I love this process. So, I love the relationship side of it. I love the education side of it, educating clients. So,
Mhm.
I enjoy that process. So,
Mhm.
I'm very good at asking those questions in a very casual and friendly way,
Mhm.
just so that they know I need this information to give them the most accurate quote I can possibly give them, or
Mhm.
even the most accurate range that I can give them.
Yeah.
So, if someone doesn't know their budget, and I can tell when I'm talking to someone, that they just don't know,
Yeah.
then what I'll do is I'll share a variety of projects that we have done, and I'll give
Mhm.
them different ranges. So, this is
Okay.
this range and what we can do. This is this range and what we can do. So, I'll go low, medium, high to
Mhm.
kinda give them an idea of what they can get for different budget ranges.
Yeah.
Um, and then they
Okay.
start to kinda understand, it's like building a house. Do you want $1,000,000 home? Do you want a $250,000 home? Do you
Mhm.
want a Corvette or a Nissan?
Mhm.
It's like buying a car, building a home. What is it that you're looking for? Those all come with different price ranges.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so valuable to be a good communicator, as you can come
Absolutely.
across and bring up sensitive topics to some people. Because I don't think money isn't a sensitive topic unless you have reservations about it,
Right.
and I'm telling you, people can sense when you have a perverse incentive. People can pick up on that really fast. So
Absolutely.
it really helps for an agency to have someone like you that is able to do that in an effective way, because I know when creatives are trying to portray their own value. It's them that are making the money. They're very attached to the end result. I feel this myself is that like you don't want money to be a sensitive topic, but it's almost as if you let your personal feelings kind of get in the way, and then people
Yeah.
can sense that.
Yeah.
So,
And you can't
um,
do that.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
money at first was when I first started out, that was the most nerve-wracking thing was talking about budget and
mhm,
money, but I'm so used to it now, and it's so important to go into a project conversation and know as much information as you possibly can. So,
yeah,
getting back to how we do that, I've got a list of questions that I ask every single time. We've got a creative brief that we can use if they don't know what they want or they don't know what their budget is.
mhm,
Sometimes I'll fill out a brief as best I can, and then I'll give it to them and let them fill out the rest
okay,
so that I'm getting as much information back from them as I can. I'm
mhm,
also trying it's my job to protect my team. So
mhm,
I want to make sure if I bring a project to my team where we're going to have either a kickoff meeting or an information gathering meeting, I want to make sure that I'm giving them the information that they need to
mhm,
brainstorm properly and to talk
yeah,
to the client properly. I don't want to waste their time is very valuable. We're very busy and we're working on a lot of projects.
mhm,
We don't charge for our brainstorming sessions, so I want to make sure I'm protecting their time as well and giving them as much information before the call as I possibly can. And
mhm,
that's only good for the client as well, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's really powerful for sure. Knowing
Yeah.
what direction you're going before you go into the meeting, doing your research, and being able to represent your people well, I imagine is really important, and
Yeah, it
can
is.
tell, and I'm sure the client can tell when whether or not you take it seriously, which you will because you're a big advocate of having of your team,
Yep.
and it's easy to speak powerfully and really advocate for something that you have a lot of faith in. So, and
Yeah,
it's great that you have a lot
absolutely.
of faith in your team. But
Yeah.
what are some best practices that you've learned over your 20 years as far as staying in touch with people and maintaining genuine relationships? Because as it's so easy to get out of touch, especially I know myself. I went to North Carolina for a little bit of school, moved back to Northern Ohio. Now I'm back down south, and now I'm somewhere in the middle. How do you have I'm guessing you have some sort of system for remembering everything about people, maybe a time, knowing a time when to reach out and making when you do reach out, doing it in a genuine way so it's not coming across as, hey, haven't heard from you in a couple years. By the way, this is what we're doing and this is what I
Yeah.
have for sale. So, because I know it can be kind of weird and it's happened to me before too. You hear from someone you haven't heard from in years, and
Yeah.
eventually, that red light kind of goes up in your head, like, oh, are they, what do they want? So how do you kind of come across as being genuine to people you haven't spoken to in a while?
Yeah. I mean, being relevant for me is one of the most important things for developing client relationships. So, when I work with someone, I try to get a sense of who they are as a person, who they are as a creative director or a marketing manager or marketing director. I
Mhm.
have a lot of connections on LinkedIn. I have a database that is full of information. I have their kids' names, their dogs' names, what kind of dog, what kind of dogs they have. I do.
I
Back when
love
I
that.
started, we didn't have CRMs and,
Mhm.
all that stuff. So I had to log everything that I learned about people.
Yeah.
So as time has gone by, there's LinkedIn now.
Mhm.
I have a database. When I came back to Space Junk, Mike Blosel, the owner, he never got rid of my email in the whole time that I was gone, which is kind of weird, right?
Mhm.
I was
He knew
definitely
he knew he knew you were coming
I
back.
was
That's why he kept
destined
it.
to come back here,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Mhm.
I have over 6,000 emails right now. Some of them date all the way back to 2013.
Jeez. Kelly, you're stressing me out right now. We'll say
Yeah,
that.
it's
6,000?
crazy. It's
Dang.
crazy. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I just have it's always been important to me to be relevant when I'm reaching out to people. I'm not going to reach out to someone who used to work for a bank and now works for a manufacturer, of automobiles and
Hmm.
show them financial work. I'm
Right.
going to make sure that if I reach out to them and they're in marketing for the automobile industry now, I'm going to share work with them that is relevant to their new industry. They already
Hmm.
know what I did for them in the past,
Yeah.
but now I know what they're doing and where they are, and I want to still be relevant with them.
Yeah.
So I have always done that. Even in sales, I, in my everyday cold selling, I make sure that I'm doing my research before I reach out to someone. If it's an agency, I know who their clients are. I know what type of work they do. I
Hmm.
know what they don't do, what they do, and who some of their most current clients are because they're showing their work on the website.
Hmm.
So I already know a lot of that when I talk to a creative director at an agency. And I've kept track of people on LinkedIn. I've followed people from one job to another position. I make
Hmm.
sure that I congratulate people when they're promoted or when they get a new position or move on to another brand.
Hmm.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But the most important thing, and I think one of the reasons I've been as successful as I have been, is because that matters to me,
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
it matters to me that when I reach out to them, they know that I'm not just calling to chit chat with them, you
Hmm.
know? I'm calling for a reason. I know what they're up to. I know what they're doing. I know what some of their challenges are, and I can offer solutions.
Yeah. I think I think there may be a bit of a difference between, say, if you were doing the creative work and trying to keep these relationships at the same time,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
people, so
Or
there
even
may
if
be
I
a,
was producing everything. I used to
yeah,
produce everything that I sold.
uh-huh, okay,
So, that was good for relationship development,
hmm,
but it wasn't good for sales.
yeah, I
Yeah.
see, hmm,
But yeah, if you're a creative and you're trying to do creative and also be the biz dev person,
hmm,
that's really hard to do.
yeah. What is some advice you would have to be to someone that wants to be top of mind, that wants to be very socially and open and communicative and have faith in their services and not come across as, someone that's there to sell, someone that's just wants to be a friend, and then if business comes up, then it comes up. Is it not bringing it up their sales at all? Is it just focusing on relationships and then kind of leaving it at that? What would you say?
As a creative person?
Yeah, as a creative person, I would.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. So, um, I mean, if some of the studios I've worked with insist on being the creative and being the biz dev person,
Hmm.
um, then I try to work with them to teach them some of the business development skills that are my best practices,
Hmm.
um, and to try to keep those things separate. Like, they should organize their schedules in a way that there's a day that they do biz dev, and
Hmm.
then the other
Okay.
time is spent on creative
Yeah. I've seen people
because
that kind of, sorry not to cut you off, but I've seen some people that kind of structure their week. So one day is primarily admin outreach, another day is creative, another day is, say, email, just kind of blocking off their day like that, so they
yeah,
can kind of have a
my day
monotask
is
and
my
get more
calendars are
stuff.
blocked. If you talk to anyone at Space
Hmm.
Junk, I mean, you can look at my calendar and you can tell exactly what I'm doing that day.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, so my days are blocked, some days for marketing and the other
Hmm.
3 days for sales, and then the last day for marketing.
Hmm.
Um, it's very important to block your time so that you can focus,
Hmm.
on what the task is at hand that you're working on.
Yeah.
Um, but, there are a lot of creatives that still wanna do that business development, and it's just my advice is to divide their time appropriately so they're working and focusing on one thing or the other.
Hmm.
If they're out on shoots or they're out, or if they're an animator themselves or whatever, um, it's very difficult to keep those things separate.
Yeah, it's kind of like working. Matt talks about this is kind of working in the business versus working on the business. So
Exactly.
if all you do is animate all day and all you do is perfect your craft, if you don't spend these days, making the outreach and the relationships and sharing what you do with people and becoming an interesting person, like then it's just you're just making things, for yourself, which is okay. But if you want to
Yeah.
be a forward facing person, you want to run an agency, you want to scale, then these are things that you kind of have to get good at. So,
Yeah. Exactly.
but, so one thing I wanted to ask you was you said you do a lot of email. What makes a good email? And I wanted to ask this because we were on the phone before the show and you told me that I left you a really good email. And as
Oh, it's
someone
one
that
of the
does a
best I've
lot,
ever gotten.
that made me feel so warm inside. So
Oh,
thank you for that. But what else kind of goes into a good email? And I've been doing it a lot lately just because of the show, just because I've moved to a new place, just because I want to make relationships and meet new people and learn as much as I can because I am new here. But my general process, and I would like you to critique it and pick it apart for me, is to lead with some kind of a compliment and be very genuine. Obviously, you can mention do your research, lead with that in the first three. I don't really have a template for it, but then just be as genuine as you can. Make them when they're reading it, kind of make them know that you did your research and that you know who they
yeah.
are and that you really value their time.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't even in the first email. I don't like to make any kind of ask, but then you just say why you're emailing them, and then you progress with just whatever why you're emailing them, and then give them a way to contact you to get in touch at the end, and leave some kind of a clear direction for them to respond to.
Yeah.
And I get, and that's a hard part of it is that you don't get a lot of responses sometimes, and people don't always respond, even if you are very praising and very genuine. So, in your opinion, what makes a good email? One that you would open and would recommend sending?
Yeah, the subject line is pretty important. Um, my subject lines usually, and there's all kinds of rules since COVID and email rules now with algorithms and things that are gonna either bounce you back or put you behind or not let you behind a firewall, those types of things.
Okay, I
Um,
actually didn't know that. So,
yeah, yeah, oh yeah. Um, I try very hard to make my subject lines if it's just me introducing myself for the first time, it'll just be Kelly Sells intro and then plus Space Junk. So I'm Kelly Sells with Space Junk. Then
okay.
we're very lucky because we have a very intriguing name.
Hmm.
So and I'm a salesperson named Kelly Sells, which is
Yeah,
also I get a lot.
that definitely came in my head.
I
Yep.
get and it's genuine. I didn't change my name. I'm married into it. Um,
Mm,
but that usually opens a conversation pretty well too. But
mhm.
I usually try to be very brief and to the point in my subject line. And then, like you said, I don't always start with a compliment. It depends on what I'm reaching out for. If I'm reaching out for new business, I always say, I hope you're having a good day. I hope your week is off to a great start, something like that, something friendly in the intro. And then I go right into what I'm asking for,
Mm.
if it's an agency, um, I just looked at your such and such project. I loved the way you told that story, or I loved, the animation and effects that you use for this, or I'll compliment the work that they're doing that I'm attracted to. And
Mhm.
that is the reason I'm reaching out to them.
So you
Um,
read. Sorry, not to cut you off. So you usually reach out to the people that are making the past marketing creatives, so you would kind of compliment on them on the stuff that they've already done. Is that
yeah,
correct? Okay.
yeah. An agency, I make sure that I'm the reason I'm reaching out is because I love their work, or I love a project that they did, or I love, just the work in general. And I think
Hmm.
Space Junk could be a good partner
Hmm.
for
Okay.
them. But I'll start by letting them know that I looked at their website, that I know the work they're doing, and that there's maybe one particular project that really resonated with me and is the reason that I'm reaching out.
Hmm.
Um, so I try to keep my emails short. My first one, I try to keep it very short. I
Yeah.
try to not put any of my live links in until the second or third paragraph down, because I
Okay.
don't want them clicking on that and going to the website and not reading the
Mm.
rest of my email.
Okay. That's actually really smart. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
And I also try and have been told that getting an email from me, like getting yours, I've never met you, and I could tell by the way you wrote your email, number 1, that you were genuine, and I could already tell what it would be like to talk to you because the tone of your email. I
Mm.
try very hard to write the way that I talk to people.
Mm. Mhm. That's a
Um,
skill.
so very
It's a skill.
casual. Yeah, very casual, try to be full of personality and,
Mhm.
positivity and that type of thing. Um, I read my emails 2 or 3 times before I hit send. I might
Mhm.
even put it in my draft folder, walk away, get a glass of water, come back, and then read it again.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
because I just wanna make sure that it sounds good. I don't like to
Yeah.
be in a hurry.
Yeah, I think I haven't done that before, but I'll read something that I wrote in the past, and I'll wonder, I was like, "What was I thinking?" Like,
I
I
know.
came off in a totally different way. It happens a lot of time over text too, but you're like, "Man, I sound like such a jerk." But
Oh,
mhm,
it's hard because you're so busy and you're doing other things. That's again why I try to block my calendar and do certain things.
mhm,
Um, but the best thing in the world for me that has happened, I don't know how long it's been out there, but the schedule send feature on Google, where you
yeah.
can schedule your emails to go out after you write them.
Oh, okay.
Oh, at the end of
So
the
you
day,
okay.
that's what I'm doing at night, is building my schedule send for emails to go out in the morning between 8 and 8:47. I know that
Uh-huh.
sounds weird, but Google will choose some times for you that kind of reflect the recommendations for sending emails.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, at night, when I go to bed and I want this stuff to be off my mind, I know that there's 15 emails in my schedule send folder that are gonna go out in the morning,
Um, okay.
which is a great feeling.
Yeah, so
And then
you kind of batch upload kinda like with social media, like scheduling
Yep.
posts and stuff like that. Okay.
So I've got 5 new ones to cold outreach. I've got about 5 or 10 follow-ups that I'm due for follow-up, and my
Uh-huh.
follow-up process is a 3-point process. So that
Uh-huh.
follow-up keeps snowballing and snowballing and snowballing.
Yeah, take us through that
But
process.
yeah.
Take us through that.
What?
Sorry, not to take us through that, that three-step process. Oh, you
Well,
got me really
let
intrigued
me
here.
finish. The schedule send
Yeah.
box in the morning, that's
Uh-huh.
once I'm up and got my coffee, I'll go to that schedule send and I'll reread those emails before they actually get sent out, just to
Mhm.
make sure that I haven't had a typo or lost a word or, something like
Mhm.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the
Man.
best feature for me. That's an awesome new feature.
Yeah, that's a great I've never heard anyone talk about that before. It's definitely
Oh, it's
something I'm gonna use,
awesome. I love
and
it.
that plays really well into the kind of the concept of blocking your time because you can when you're in a good headspace, when you know you can sit down and do this single task of reaching out, making emails, you're in that right headspace and you can kind of knock it out. So yeah, Kelly
Yeah.
Sells is a master of email. So yeah, that was
Yeah.
really interesting. Yeah.
Well, you have to be these days because there's no more in-person meetings. There's no more
Right.
traveling. I'm not going and doing capabilities presentations and getting in front of my agencies and reading the room and watching body language. There's no more of that. It's all gone.
Yeah. Was
It's
that kind of a
so
hard transition?
awful. Huh?
Yeah. Was that kind of a hard transition? Because
Oh,
I
it
know,
was the worst. It was the
yeah,
worst. I mean, when the pandemic hit, I didn't know what I was gonna do. I mean, my whole process is in person, talking to people, reading body language, sharing work, listening to them talk about, what work they're trying to do, what new technique they wanna use, or what story they wanna tell, and just reading, showing the reel and reading. I've seen the work before. So when I'm showing my reel, I'm not watching the reel. I'm watching everybody in the room watch the reel
yeah,
because I want to see their reaction to it. I can anticipate questions and things that I can watch people sit up straight when something comes up and then slack back in their chair when the next one comes on. So I know they
uh-huh,
really like that spot and I want to talk to them about that.
okay, yeah,
So, yeah, it was the worst thing in the world for salespeople when the pandemic hit because anybody who operates like I do, any business owner, any salesperson, your chance to be in front of people was gone.
mhm,
And
yeah,
being on a Zoom call is not the same as being in a room with somebody.
yeah.
Yeah.
How soon after sending emails do you try to transition to a some kind of a Zoom call or in-person meeting? Do you mention that usually in the first email, or is that
I
something
I
you
mention
would
it, if not in the first one, it's definitely the second one. So my 3-point process is this is a
mm,
cold outreach, right?
mhm,
So I email the person, I'm cordial, I'm friendly, I'm relevant, and then I close with, I will follow up with you again soon to see if we can find a time to get together. I never ask a client to let me know when they wanna do something. It's
yeah,
my job to schedule an appointment with them. It's
yep,
my job to follow up with them. It's not
mhm,
their job to follow up with me. They're
yep,
getting my email plus another 25 or 30 or 50 every day,
yeah.
you
Kind
know?
of reduce the friction for them
Yeah,
to commit to. So, like, if someone were to ask you, it's like, "Oh, we need to get coffee sometimes," just an example. You say, "Okay, great. Let's go to this place, this time. Meet me there?" Question mark.
yeah,
That's something that's really been valuable for me is that
yeah,
if you really want to get someone's time, because people are very protective of their time, and rightly so, you have to
exactly.
be not demanding, but and very putting yourself out there.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
mhm. So,
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, so there's the first email, and then, I always include a link to our website for our general reel, so that they can at least see what we're about, and that will take them not only to the reel, but to the website, so they
Okay.
can look at the people, the team, the work, a couple other projects in our portfolio. Hopefully, they'll spend some time there. And then I let them know that I'll follow up with them soon to talk about, next steps or getting together or whatever.
Mhm.
So that's the first point. That's the first touch point. The second one is anywhere from 5 to 7 days after that one. I'll email them the second email and say, I hope you're having a great day or your week's off to a great start. I use a bunch of different ones. But my second comment is I wanted to bump my email back up in your inbox and ask if you had a chance to take a look at our work or, whatever I've asked them to do. And then my
Mhm.
next sentence is, do you have a few minutes to talk with me? Here's a few
Mm.
times that I'm available. I'd love
Okay.
to tell you more about Space Junk, and I'd love to learn more about how you work with studios like ours for video and animation.
Mm. I not to cut you off again, I'm sorry, but I
No?
love how you say in the first email, "I will follow up in
Yeah,
X amount of time," so it takes the pressure off them to respond to the first one,
yeah.
and they already know. They'll be like, "Oh, okay," they read the first one, they say, "Okay," I don't have to come up with a
I
clever
don't have to
response,
do
but
anything.
yeah, they know who you are.
Yep.
And then when they see the second one, it's several days later, so they're not like, "Oh man, so spammy." But yeah. So as you're saying it, I'm putting these things together. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, what's the last three part of it? Mm.
So the third part of it is, again, going back to relevancy. If they haven't gotten back to me,
Mhm.
or they haven't indicated that they would like to schedule time with me, then I'm going to hit them with a very specific reel that is relevant to the type of work that they do as a brand or as an agency. So I have software that I use to build our reels where
Mhm.
I have every project that we've ever done that is representative of the type of work that we do.
Mhm.
Gosh, I don't even know how many projects are on there. Hundreds, hundreds. Um, but I will build a reel that is specific to their brand, not a big one, just like maybe 2 or 3 projects that they can click on and go watch and say, "Okay, all right, so here's a live action project that they did. Here's an animated project that they did in my vertical, like, banking, retail, food and beverage, whatever vertical I'm reaching out to. I make
Mhm.
sure that I'm not showing a food and beverage company a banking commercial, you
Right.
know?
Mhm.
Um, but that's my third touch point is, look, I'd really love to get together with you. If you don't have, I don't go to the negative side. I try not to ever say if you don't have time. I try to always be until we're able to meet. I wanted to show you a couple projects that I think are relevant.
Mm.
And then
Mm.
here's the reel, and that's a link. And again, that's a little further down, so they're not clicking on that first and not reading
Mhm.
my email.
Yeah.
Um, and then I'll say again, I'll follow up with you again, but on the third email, sometimes on the second, depending on if there's a response, how that
Mhm.
process goes.
Yeah.
Um, I'll include my calendar link and say, if it's easier for you, whether it's next week or when you have time, here's my calendar link. Feel free to go on and schedule an appointment. I get
Yeah.
a lot of appointments through my calendar link.
Mhm. You use Google Calendar?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That seems to be the best. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot of value in that framework. Like
Yeah.
that's something that people who are looking to take solid action, that's something you can do today is just start that 3-step sequence. I'm gonna be rewatching this and taking notes for sure.
Good.
But yeah, that was worth a lot for sure. But I
So
really
there's
appreciate
there's
you
a
sharing that with us.
yeah, so there's a last step to that. And again, this goes back to being relevant. It goes back to valuing my own process and
Mhm.
making sure that the outreach that I am doing is maintained um, for communication. So the last step is if there's someone that I've reached out to 3 times, I haven't heard back from them. I haven't really had a chance to schedule any time face to face with them virtually. I have a marketing program for Space Junk for anywhere that I've been. That is an ongoing monthly marketing program where once a month I send out new work that we've just completed, or I'll send out something I know that they've never seen before or can
Mhm.
pretty much guess that they've never seen before. For
Mhm.
me, that's called my just launched list. For
Mhm.
Space Junk, we have a space theme. Just launched is kind of cute to go along with
Mhm.
Space Junk.
I see.
Um,
I
you
see what you
know,
did there. Yeah.
so I try
Mhm.
to stay within our brand with
Mhm.
my marketing. So if I've gone to someone 3 or 4 times and I'm not hearing from them, or I'm not developing that communication, I immediately put that person on my just launch list so that at least once a month they're seeing new work from me from Space Junk.
Mhm. Okay.
That's a
Yeah.
huge list. It's a process that is automated. It's the touch of a button. It's
Mhm.
tied to a database. I can
Yeah, so
send
you
it
would
out.
you
Yep.
tag them with the people that you haven't responded to, you would tag them in
I would
your
tag them
campaign
just
software.
launched. Yep.
Mhm.
And then
Okay.
once a month, they're getting work from me because one thing I try to tell anyone who's going into what I do, don't even people that I've known for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you cannot ever think that when you leave a room with someone or you hang up on a Zoom call, that they're going to remember you,
Hmm.
because they have 15, 20 other studios banging on their door trying to get work. So you have to stay in front of them to remind them who you are and the type of work that you do.
Hmm.
9 times out of 10, when I send a just launched email, I can see, well, I can see the views of people that are
Hmm.
viewing it.
Hmm.
Um, so that's a red flag for me. Talk to that person. They just looked at your work, you know.
Hmm.
Make sure to write that down and follow up with them in a couple days. Hey,
Yeah.
I don't say, I know that you saw my project. I don't say that. We all
Like,
use
she's
software.
watching us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We all use software that helps us. I mean, I have lead generation, I have Simeon, I have Google, I have so many things that I use to try to
Hmm.
keep me in front of clients.
Yeah.
But I'll say, did you have a chance to look at the work? I'd love to answer questions for you or talk about anything that you have going on right now that might be a good fit.
Hmm. Yeah, I love the way you laid that out. How you go from the first to the second and then to the just launched list. Because the way you laid that out, if I got something like that, I would feel I would feel bad not responding. Like I wouldn't even
Right.
I would see the emails come in and I would be like, "Oh, there's space junk again." And but it wouldn't be like I wouldn't add you to my block list because I get a ton of spam email as well. And
Right.
if you go from first day, wait a few days to 7 days, and then what to once a month, that's a transition to where you're not going completely cold, but you're still top of
Exactly.
mind enough. Once every month isn't enough for someone to say like, okay, get out of my inbox, but you're
Right.
still in there at some point.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that's yeah, that was really valuable. I really appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Good.
What are Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I was gonna kind of change the topic a little bit, so you can kind of go ahead and say what you're gonna say.
No, I just said good. I'm glad that was helpful.
Okay, yeah, that was like I said, I'll definitely be reading that and taking notes because what part of the one of the barriers to sending any kind of cold outreach is people they get so much spam and stuff that they don't want to see, and we all have the worst opinion of ourselves.
Right.
So we have that in our heads, and we just don't want to create um, any kind of image portray ourselves in a way that may come across as that. But if you have a
Right.
simple framework like that that you can kind of work off of, and you see examples of people like Space Junk doing it well, then you know that it can be done well, and then you
Yeah.
can do your best to work within that framework and try and replicate it. So I really appreciate that for sure.
Good. Yeah. It
So you
works.
work, yeah, I can't wait to try it. Um, so you do a lot of work with throughout your career. You've interacted with, you've talked with a lot of creative directors, and um, what are some of the things that creative directors are looking for, whether it's in the people they hire, the people they work with. What are some of the things that they look for? What are the qualities that they value? And what are the things you try to appeal to when interacting with them?
Wow. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Um, the creative directors that I know, the creative directors that I've worked with, even the ones that I go to now that I don't know, they're looking for someone that understands the industry. They're looking for someone that understands what they're up against. And they're looking for someone that is well versed in what they do, that is smart, is you know well spoken, well read. um they're looking for a partner that I assume that you're speaking to not what my creative directors look for to hire new people, but what creative directors look for to hire space junk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
They wanna see a variety of work. They wanna see good execution of several different things, whether it's the way a spot was directed and shot to tell a story, or the way animation was used to enhance a story, and tell the story a little better. Um, that they are experts in their field.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, when you work, whether you're working with an agency or you're working with a direct client, a creative director is a creative director, and they want to know that we understand the process and that we are experts in what we do, so that
Mm-hmm.
when they come to us, their job is going to be a lot easier.
Yeah. Okay.
It's going to make it easier for them to manage the project with their client, whether we're in front of the client or not. It's going to make their job easier.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we like the type of creative directors that they may have a storyboard and they may know exactly how they want to have it executed. But our favorite thing is when we're in a meeting with a creative director and they say, but you guys are the experts. So if you have a different idea, or if you
Mm-hmm.
have a variation of this that you're thinking of, let me know, you
Yeah.
know?
So that's how you know you've done your job. You get that
Yeah.
feedback. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There
Awesome.
are some creative directors that, and I love the ones that tell me up front, look, this is the board. The client has signed off on it. The client wants what they want. We need you to execute this exactly the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
We're fine with that. You know, we're
Yeah.
absolutely fine with that. And again, they've kind of told us in a few words that their client might not be easy to deal with. They've
Mm-hmm.
gotten them to this point and they've gotten approval. They need to execute it just like this.
Mm. Yeah.
We can read between the lines on stuff like that. So, um, but we really love those opportunities when they say, you guys are the experts, so let us know if there's a better way to do this or a different way to do this or something that we can add to it. And
Yeah.
our creative directors and our directors, even our creative producers, they're just so smart and so well versed on
Mm-hmm.
everything that's out there, and so passionate about execution styles
Mm-hmm.
that there's no ego involved when they do, if and when they do start to bring up other ideas, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that we can bring to the table.
Yeah.
It's
They're
just
probably more
such a
open to it.
collaborative
Yeah.
experience. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to draw, a lot of the audience of the show are more independent creatives, people that are owner operators. I think a lot of those parallels and the success I've seen reaching out to agency owners, people that run bigger, that have more people under their belt, more experience, that are maybe 2 or 3 steps ahead of you in the place you want to be.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of those same principles would apply to, say, if an owner operator was to reach out to a creative agency to do some kind of a one-off service. Um, Obviously, there's some difference when you're representing your own agency versus representing yourself,
Right.
but there's a lot of research that goes into finding, a partner that you want to work with, that if you have a very specific service that you think would actually benefit them, then you can be very open and um, very sold on proving that value of the service. And I think the more the more research you do and the more you are faithful in what you have to offer, the more, like, for you, you believe so much in your team, then it's easier to communicate that value and make that connection. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have only been as successful as I have been because of the team behind me. I am nothing without my studio, you
hmm
know? And over the years, I've made so many connections and so many friends in this industry, professional friends, artist friends, creative directors, you know, marketing directors. I truly value them, and you know, you're only as good as the people behind you.
mm,
You know, it's
yeah,
you have to, if you're a freelance creative director or you're a freelance animator or DP or editor, whatever your craft is, if you're freelancing and you're trying to get clients, you have to understand that You're only as good as the service you're providing. So the other thing, I think it's tough being a freelancer these days because
It
I
is, yeah.
preach and preach and preach to freelancers, to younger kids. I shouldn't call them kids, to younger artists.
Mhm.
They are to me, but to younger artists that are just coming out into the market, especially in a post-pandemic world,
Right.
you have got to understand not only the role of the person that you're reaching out to and some of their challenges,
Mhm.
you
Catering
have
to
to,
those, yeah.
yeah,
Really knowing what they want and trying to package it up in a way that they just give them what they want, basically.
exactly.
Mhm.
You have to understand customer service, you have to understand communication. If you're a creative director and you're going to work direct to brand with someone, you're going to have to build a team, right? So you're going to
Mhm.
need a production studio, you're going to need crew, you're going to need, producers, you're going to need all those things to bring this project to life. You need
Mhm.
to understand the role of the people that you're hiring. If you're
Mhm.
on set, get to know what a gaffer does, understand what the DP does, understand what an AC does, you know? Get
Mhm.
to understand and educate yourself on the process and not just what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah, I love
Everyone's
that.
gonna wanna work with you again if you understand the entire process.
I love that, yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. What, can you explain to us, I've heard you before mention the 90-10, um, of freelancers. Can you, elaborate on that a little bit?
Oh, then my 90-10 rule?
Yeah, the Kelly Sells 90-10
How
rule,
did
that's what
you
we're
hear
calling it.
that?
To be honest, I don't remember. I had it in my notes when I was looking for the episode. I think it might have been with your episode on Matt, but, can you kind of elaborate on that for
Yeah,
us?
it's 90% personality, 10% talent. So that's kind of what my team at Space Junk and myself and other places that I've been and being a consultant. I used to talk to students at CCAD that were in their senior year and coming out into the market. Some of them wanted jobs in agencies or studios, others wanted to freelance. And
Mhm,
I would tell them the same thing. Make sure you're learning customer service. Make sure you have a database that works, so you're taking notes and you know what the changes are for a project. But the 90-10 rule is, listen, if you're coming to work for us at Space Junk, I don't care how talented you are. If you're an asshole, I don't want to work with you.
There's the
So
door, get out, yeah.
exactly. None of us wanna work with you if you're an asshole. The producer doesn't want to, the creative director doesn't want to, the client doesn't want to. Not that
Mhm,
an animator or an editor, well, an editor will always be in front of a client. An animator sometimes won't be, but I don't care h it's 90% talent, 10 it's 10 per 90% personality, 10% talent. Because guess
mhm,
what? That guy sitting next to you that is cordial and a team player and is worried about customer service, that has 10% of the talent that you do, we can teach them everything else.
love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that speaks to me a lot personally because I felt like I was operating at a deficit getting into the creative industry because I went to school for strength and conditioning, and I had I had a big, kind of career direction shift, and,
Wow.
once I admitted to myself, I got the first once I put everything learned how to do all the website, put all my work out there, and just was relentless in believing in myself and my service, then I didn't go back, and,
Wow.
um, yeah, and I developing this part of myself, the reaching out and building communication skills and not being an asshole has gotten me the 90% of the way because I know there's
Yeah.
people that I work with now that are and the first thing I think is and I get a little imposter syndrome around is like, man, this person is so technically skilled and I look like an 80-year-old just you trying to use a computer sometimes.
Yeah.
But I see stuff like that now as I've learned to view it as A, an opportunity to get better, and B, to say, man, it's a new challenge. Let's overcome it because this is stuff that I that I can control. I can control how much time I put
Exactly.
into improving the skill. But, this other stuff, this personality, this relating to people, this empathy, that's something that is a non-negotiable. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
um, yeah, I really
90-10.
appreciate that. 90-10, 90-10. The Kelly Sells 90-10 principle.
It's
That's
not just me. It's not just me.
yeah. Well, I heard it from you first, so that's
Yeah.
that's the name it gets. But
Yeah.
okay, so you've got I'm not gonna keep you all night, but you've taught me so much just in this episode, and I can't wait to get back to reading and taking notes. But I want to kind of the last direction I want to go is say someone wants to be better at business development today, right now. They just watched this episode. They want to put in some foundational habits, and you've already given us some stuff with email and some outreach. Well, something that is a good first place to start if a creative says, I want to be better at business development.
Yeah. Well, first of all, make sure you're representing someone that you're passionate about. Make sure you're representing an industry or a technique that you're excited about. Make sure you're very passionate about what you're representing. My second piece of advice would be invest in some type of database, whatever it is that you're going to invest in or use. I mean, Google's free. Um, to build that database of the people that you're reaching out to and keep track of that and build upon that. Um, this is kind of, you know, this is kind of a new, I've updated my best practices as I've gone along. And this came from my consulting time, but don't start your process of business development until you have a database that is clean and full of the places that you want to go to first, and make sure that you've got at least 100 to 150 people in there or
Hmm.
businesses in there. I used to say just start doing it 5 a day, 5 a day, 5 a day. It'll snowball. But I feel differently about that now that we've been in the pandemic and pandemic.
Hmm.
You have to be really focused about what you're doing and what it is that you're going after. And the best way to be focused is to have a strong database to start with that will take you a while to get through so
Hmm.
that your time can be spent on the research side of it and not be as stressful as it is
Yeah.
doing 5 a day, 5 a day, 5 a day.
Yeah, and it's probably a lot more helps keep it a lot more consistent too, because you're kind of more going down a list and you can kind
Yeah.
of add repeat more. Because if you're task switching, kind of like we talked about, between gathering leads and then making your content, then
Yes.
it's easy to get muddy the water a little bit there. I can see for sure.
Yeah. Be very, very disciplined. You have to be so disciplined in this job.
Hmm.
Um, and you have to love it. You have to love it. You can't look at your daily tasks, which are very cumbersome, as the core of the job. You have to look at the passion that you have for the work that you're going to create.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
has to be your lead generator to go out there and talk to people.
Hmm.
Don't let the tactical stuff get you down, because you just have to do it. It's part of the process. And
Hmm.
I mean, I love that process, the research and learning about people and putting them in my database and reaching out to them and learning more about them every time I reach out to them. That's how you develop relationships, and that's how you come across genuine.
Hmm. Love
So,
that.
there's that. Um, what would be my other advice? Make sure you're working with people that you like and respect. The people that you're building around you, whether it's people that are going to help you, an editor that you're going to give work to, an animator that you're going to give work to, a client that you're going to work with. Make sure that you enjoy and like the people that you're working with. Of course,
Hmm.
you're going to come across some people that you don't enjoy working with, but I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I can count on one hand people that I don't want to work with again, ever.
Mm.
Honestly, on one hand. This is
Mm.
such an incredible community here, not just in I'm in Columbus.
Hmm.
It's such an incredible community, not just in Columbus, but the whole state of Ohio. and the region,
Yeah. It's the
Midwest is just
yeah,
such an
exactly.
amazing
Yeah.
community. We all
Mhm.
know each other. We all know of each other. We all support each other. There's no very little, very little backstabbing. Um,
Yeah.
like I said, I can count on one hand people that I would say I don't care to work with them again
Mm,
after 30 years of doing this.
mm,
Um, so make sure the people that you're reaching out to and the people that you're developing those relationships with, that you genuinely like working with them.
mm. Love that.
Yeah.
Cast the kinda cast the net in the right place, and then
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about, things going bad, so I really
Yeah. And
appreciate that.
as you do it more and more, you get a really good sense of I can read a room in 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and I can pretty much read a person, you know, as far as what they're gonna be like to work with pretty quickly.
Mm. Yeah, that's something you've learned, I'm sure, over time, but,
Yeah.
Kelly, I thank you so much for coming on. I had a great time chatting. You taught me literally, like, so much, and
Oh, good.
I I can't say thank you enough. Like,
You're
there's
very welcome.
a lot
Yeah,
of
you're very
tactical
welcome.
a lot of tactical foundational things that me or anyone watching can literally do today. And you were very succinct in delivering your expertise. And I can't say thank you enough. Yeah, where can people go if they want to learn more about you and space junk?
Oh, go to our website.
Hmm.
You can go to our website. You can also go to our LinkedIn page. We are really, since I came back on board, we are really ramping up our posting and our marketing. So you can go to LinkedIn to see work. You can go to our website, um, our Instagram. Um, yeah, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. So anybody who's interested in talking about the business or anything that I do or how I do it, or even the work that Space Junk does, just reach out to me. All my contact information is on LinkedIn, my email and everything. So
Awesome.